Okay, the third topic I want to talk to you about tonight is risk-taking. And I believe that attorneys are, by nature, not risk-takers. Nikki's an exception, right? I mean, leaving the practice of law to do what she's doing now is, thank you, it's a daunting sort of undertaking. And so I really respect that. But the idea that a lawyer would go out and do that is actually fairly rare. And so in my experience, just general observation is that people are in college and they don't know what to do with their lives. They're not math, science people, and they'd like to have a stable life. They're afraid to start a business. They don't have the business experience to go and get an MBA. They're not sure they have the interest. And so law school is kind of an easy place to go. But it's really, I think, more about, it's not about not thinking about your career, but it really has a lot more to do with sort of an adverse reaction to risk, a lack of desire to take on risk. You go to law school, and it's sort of funny because all of the things that you are afraid of, consciously or unconsciously, you learn about. You learn about all the negative consequences to these things you're afraid of in every class that you take in law school. And so that, I think, sort of underscores whatever your adversity with risk is, right? Whatever your challenge there is, it's every day you learn something about how to manage risk and how to avoid risk. And so I think you become more risk adverse as you're in law school. And then you go to a firm, and of course everyone wants you to give the advice that's really down the line. It's in the middle. And they want you to do that, and you're really trained to do that because you're afraid of being wrong, right? You're afraid of being known to have given bad advice, or to have stretched, right? To help a client stretch into something that might have been a more risk-based decision. And it's hard to do that because, the cards are stacked against you once you're in a firm. The firm wants you, and all of your peers want you to be very conservative in how you give advice. That's how you preserve the reputation of the firm and mitigate any kind of potential liability around the advice that you give. But I think it's really important to understand risk and to be a risk taker as you develop your practice. And I think that's especially true today because the market is so competitive. And so I think understanding where your client's risks are and understanding your client's risk tolerance is of critical importance as you develop client relationships. And you really, in the beginning of your practice, you won't have a lot of direct client contact necessarily. Depends on where you go. So this will sort of come over time. And as it comes, and you really need to really learn to how to associate with your client and what their main concerns are so that you can provide more risk-based advice to your client. The decisions that your clients make are not necessarily the clients that you would be comfortable with as a lawyer. Your job is not to make the client decision, it's to enable your client to make an informed decision for themselves. And that's not to say that you, and when I talk about risk, I'm not talking about taking a risk that an illegality would not be discovered. I'm talking about risk within a legal sort of risk scale. And so to give you an example of that, I had a client once come to me wanting to do a transaction. I looked at it and I said, well, the structure of the transaction is in effect a tax avoidance scheme, and it's illegal. We can't do that. And the client really insisted that they wanted to structure the transaction that way. And I had to say at that point, I can't help you. I can't continue to represent you if you insist on doing a transaction that is clearly illegal. I won't support that. On the other hand, I had another client fairly recently say to me that they wanted to sell a business line. And in negotiating that transaction, the buyer of the business wanted unlimited indemnification for loss. And that is unlimited as to amount, scope, duration, everything. And I advised the client against it, and I explained the issue. And the client said, I understand your position, but I must sell the business line. It is more important to me to sell this business line right now because of the drain on the balance sheet that it represents than it is for me to take the risk on the indemnification. I'm comfortable with that trade-off. And so we closed the deal. And we did it on the terms that I wouldn't have recommended or ever accepted myself. But my client's risk tolerance in that situation is not my own. And so I have to respect that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And that's a client that will always come back to you as a lawyer, as a practitioner, because they know they can trust you to provide the information they need to make that decision. So when they're making it, they understand the risk, but they nevertheless are the person really making the decision. I think the corollary to risk-taking with your clients is risk-taking in your professional lives. There have been a couple of points in my career when I've taken a risk and I've sort of jumped off the path that everyone recognizes as being sort of the traditionally accepted path to success. In fact, my parents and my friends were mortified when I told them that I was going to leave DLA Piper, where I had a very vibrant corporate securities practice, to go in-house. I mean, they just couldn't understand that. And you know, they might have understood it had I had a practice that wasn't successful at the time, but I was doing pretty well. And so jumping off that particular path was very difficult for people to understand. But the one thing that I found that I have in common with a lot of attorneys who are very happy in their professional lives is that they took risks and really extended themselves, challenged themselves to take risks in their professional lives. And they may not have chosen always the path that was well understood by other people in the profession or in their families. And these are people who are generally happy. And it's just a general observation. It certainly worked out for me. Risk-taking, each time I've done that, has really enriched me. I mean, it's been challenging. My current position was another risk that I took when I left Fannie Mae to go to Capital Impact. And I'm very happy that I did, because for as challenging as it's been, I have learned something new every day, and literally. And you know, people think you're going to learn the profession and then it's all the same. It's not. I learned something new every day, and I love that about my life. Now it's very stressful, right? I mean, not knowing what's going to walk into my office on any given day. You know, one day it could be an employment issue, another day it might be a tax issue, another day it might be the sale of a business. Another day it might be a commercial real estate transaction. And on some days I might have 3 or 4 of those different issues come up all at once. But that sort of diversity within my practice is what creates the challenge for me and keeps it interesting. And that's not a choice that everyone would make for themselves, but it was the right choice for me. And I think it's just about, as you progress in your career, really thinking about what are the right challenges for you and what risks are you willing to take. And I submit to you that taking risks in this particular legal environment is really critical to your success. It's just about evaluating the risk. It doesn't mean take any risk, but I do think you need to think about risk-taking in your practice in a way that really lawyers never did before. So anyway, I want to thank you for your time tonight, and I want to let you know that I would encourage you throughout your career, periodically, just reevaluate where you are. Think about, who are your relationships? Are you excellent in what you do? Can you improve yourself in some way, either personally or professionally? And have you taken the risks that have led you to a place in life that makes you happy? And I think that you should periodically think about those 3 things as your practice develops. And the answers will change over time. But you don't want to stagnate in your career. You really want to reevaluate periodically, and that's what will keep it fresh, and that's what will make you successful.